Donald Trump ran on this BS nonsense and come on this show. I'm the art of the deal man. I'm a deal maker, which was a book he didn't even write that got ghostwritten. It was this fake persona. It was this Hollywood persona that he conned the American people into believing that he was some deal maker. Then he gets in the White House and he doesn't even try to work with the Democrats on a deal. All he does is insult them. He does nicknames. He trashes them. He didn't cut any deals.
Tim Miller was a guest on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, and Tim Miller was following an appearance of Corey Lewandowski on Piers Morgan's show, where Corey Lewandowski did nothing but sing Donald Trump's praises. And some of what Tim Miller is going to reference here in his debate and appearance with Piers Morgan is about that Corey Lewandowski appearance on Piers Morgan. Tim Miller went in red hot and really laid into Piers Morgan, so it's pretty entertaining. We're going to take a look at these clips from Piers Morgan's show with Tim Miller. I'll give my thoughts here and there. Let's check this out.
I'm joined by Tim Miller, the host of the Bulwark podcast.
That little exchange you had about how it's so surprising they've never met. Do you know why Trump and Kamala Harris have never met, Piers? Have you thought about it for a second? Do you know why they really haven't met?
Tell me.
Because he was a toddler and he threw a temper tantrum after he lost a fair election. And for the first time in America since the Civil War, we did not have a peaceful transfer of power. We did not have a ceremonial transfer of power where the former president, like a man, goes and stands on the stage and greets the next incoming president, where he helps the incoming team with the transition, where the vice president's team meets with the other. That didn't happen last time because Donald Trump attempted a coup and he had a temper tantrum and he flew home to Mar-a-Lago just to go golfing and to hang out with the Cougars on the pool deck.
To be clear, all of which
That's what happened. That's why they haven't met, because he tried a coup.
Well, to be clear, at the time, I heavily criticized him for all the things you've just said. But that doesn't explain why...
Okay, sure, but Corey Lewandowski comes on your show and he's like, oh, Donald Trump and Kamala haven't met.
Well, hang on.
Oh, my goodness. Wow, that's so interesting. They haven't met. And then Corey's over there saying, it's because Kamala was ineffective as a senator. No, it's because Donald Trump was supposed to be a deal maker, didn't meet with any of the Democratic senators. He said he was going to be the art of the deal man, but he didn't try to actually do any deals. All he did was insult people on Twitter. And then after he lost to Kamala Harris, fair and square, and Joe Biden, he didn't have the dignity to have a transfer of power for the first time in American history.
I've just said I agree.
Shameful.
It's embarrassing.
He's an embarrassment.
I've just said I agree with you. So let's park that to one side.
But you didn't say it to Corey. You didn't challenge Corey. It was a very chummy interview. I know you want to get Trump on the show, but it was very chummy.
Okay.
And you didn't challenge Corey that much.
Ask can be chummy too. Why didn't she make herself invited?
Donald Trump ran.
Isn't that the job of senators?
Come on. Donald Trump ran on this BS nonsense and come on this show. I'm the art of the deal man. I'm a deal maker, which was a book he didn't even write that got ghostwritten. It was this fake persona. It was this Hollywood persona that he conned the American people into believing that he was some deal maker. Then he gets in the White House and he doesn't even try to work with the Democrats on a deal. All he does is insult them. He does nicknames. He trashes them. He didn't.
And these are great points by Donald. And these are great points by Tim Miller about Donald Trump. I mean, the whole art of the deal thing is nonsense. And over the last year or so, while not even in office, he squashed a deal that Democrats were trying to make with Republicans on the border. Republicans claim that the border is the most important thing, facing our country, and the Democrats try to make a deal with the Republicans, and Donald Trump, who is not even a person in office, is able to squash that deal to try to keep Joe Biden and now Kamala Harris from getting elected.
He didn't cut any deals. Donald Trump, Joe Biden ended up being the deal maker that got the bipartisan deal on gay marriage, on infrastructure. So that's why Kamala didn't go to the White House. He didn't ever invite her. How about that?
Well, yeah,
Did you try that?
I'm curious about your own journey. You were Jeb Bush's guy, Republican, and now you're a Democrat. How does that happen?
Well, I'm not a Democrat. I left the party in 2020. Very good timing, I thought. In about November of 2020, after the election, I was hopeful. Throughout 2020, I was hopeful that we could get our party back from Donald Trump and get back to a more classical liberal traditional party that had a respect for the rule of law, that had a respect for our allies abroad, international relationships, that had a respect for immigration and the immigrant story and how that's an important part of America. I was hoping we could get back to that kind of compassionate conservatism after 2020. And then what happened was Donald Trump lost, and he threw an extended temper tantrum. And rather than standing up to him, rather than telling him, sir, Mr. President, it's time for you to accept your loss and move on, all of the Republicans basically went along with it. And everybody participated in this absurd lie, in this absurd fantasy where every Republican was like, yeah, we're worried about the voting machines. And I was so disheartened and discouraged by that I wrote an article saying I was leaving the party. It ended up being totally correct. Over the next 5 years, that now everyone who spoke out against Trump, like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, has been thrust out of the party, and people who are like embarrassing clowns are made to be the nominee of our party, and like Mark Robinson in North Carolina or Kari Lake in Arizona, simply because they're willing to suck up to Donald Trump. It's not a traditional conservative or a classically liberal party anymore. It's an embarrassment. It's a cult of one man.
Now, I would agree with Tim Miller about everything that he's saying about Donald Trump to Piers Morgan here. I mean, all of his points are correct. You have a party that's just completely upside down, where all of these kooks that Tim Miller is mentioning here are now the people basically in control, and anybody with any sense is pushed aside. Now, I think that Democrats have to say that just because Liz Cheney is correct on Donald Trump does not mean that Liz Cheney is your friend. She has all kinds of horrible policies, but she just happens to be correct on this one area. So I think there is a danger in the Democrats sort of letting these never Trumpers into their party to try to make the party more like the old Republican Party instead of allowing it to continue to be more and more progressive. So I think that's a danger that the Democratic Party could be facing. They don't want to let people like Liz Cheney in who are not their friends just because they're against Donald Trump. I'd also say, with Tim Miller's point here, the Republican Party that he's nostalgic for, if it ever existed, it's been a long time. I mean, much of what we're seeing in the Republican Party right now goes all the way back to the 90s, when they were battling against Bill Clinton and impeaching him and all of that. So Tim Miller is exactly right about what he's saying about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is terrible. And at some point, the Republicans, if Donald Trump loses this next election, you would have to think that maybe the Republican Party establishment is going to break away from him, you would think. But that doesn't mean they're going to become a sensible party anytime soon. I think it's going to take a long time, if ever, for them to shake all of this insanity that's going on right now with the Republicans. Probably much to the chagrin of people like Tim Miller.
I'm very happy to leave it, and I think everything that's happened over the last 5 years has validated all of my criticisms of the party.
If she loses the debate, does she lose the election?
I don't think so. I mean, look, there are very few debates that are knockout punches. What we saw in June
the last one
was an aberration, not the norm. You don't see that very often. Usually it's a mixed bag with some people thinking one won, some thinking the other one. So I don't think that the debate is make or break. But I think it's very important. I think that a lot of the American people want to see that she can stand up to Trump, and see that she's up for this.
Yeah.
And, because she's still getting introduced. And so I think it's very important to her for sure.
Yeah. Tim Miller, host of the Bulwark podcast out of New Orleans. Great to talk to you.
Now, Tim Miller's point about the debate here with the upcoming Kamala Harris and Donald Trump debate, I think he is correct that you don't tend to have debates that are knockout punches. And that debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, you're just not going to see that kind of thing with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I think at worst for Kamala Harris, it might be a draw. But she's not going to have the difficulty speaking and remembering things and all of that Joe Biden sadly had. She's a much younger person with no cognitive problems that we're aware of. So she's going up against Donald Trump, who is a much older person and has cognitive problems. So I would expect Kamala Harris to win that debate. But I think Tim Miller is correct about what he's saying to Piers Morgan, that doesn't necessarily determine the election. But what do you think about this? How do you think Tim Miller fared against Piers Morgan discussing Donald Trump here? I think Tim Miller is absolutely correct with his assessment of Donald Trump. I mean, the guy's a man-child. He's a baby. You know, we've really never seen anything like this at the national level. Someone as petty and just all around awful as Donald Trump. And you've had a lot of Republicans like Tim Miller who have left their party because of this, because they've become, you know, they basically worship this guy like a god who is a total clown. Piers Morgan loves to say that he's not a conservative, but he seems to always be kissing up to Donald Trump and Republicans and always fighting against Democrats or people who are against Donald Trump like Tim Miller. So I don't really see how Piers Morgan can paint himself as not being a conservative, but you know, I'm in the United States. I don't know what people in the UK think about this. Let me know if you're in the UK. Let me know in your comments what you think about Piers Morgan. But how do you think this debate overall went between Tim Miller and Piers Morgan? Make sure to give me your comments about this or anything else. I love to hear what you have to say. This channel is growing really quickly, and that's due to your comments and likes and subscribe. So I appreciate all of them. I want to continue to grow the channel, and your likes and subscribes do that. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure to do so. This is Chris on Culture. I will see you in the next video.